Where Sky Meets Eternity is a documentary film about an art project that took place during the pandemic year of 2020. It describes how each artist approached their assignment and what this project represents to the artists, to the community, and why projects like this should pop up all over the country for the good of the country. The task was simple enough. Ask 12 artists to listen to the story of a previous artist, then tell the story the way they hear it, passing it to the next. Begin with a poet because, well, why not? Draw your own conclusions, but there's so much to unravel in the passage of this story. Arrivals, departures, and coming back again. And we hope you'll take your time and enjoy the movie.
Well, my name is John Berry, and I sit on the board of directors here at the River House. I'm a poet, and among other things, carpenter. I got the idea for this Passages project a couple of years ago, actually. I'd been talking with a friend of mine, Michael Zarnecki. He's another poet and my publisher up in New York. They had done a similar project through the Southern Finger Lakes Arts Council, and in their project, it was much like ours. It was based on the game of telephone, and what they did is they went from poet to painter to poet to painter, poet and painter over the course of a year for 12 different artists. And it just sounded like a really very fascinating project to me. And I started talking to our director, Joanna Murray here, about maybe doing something like that on our own. But I was really intrigued about the idea of expanding the scope of the artistry. So we brainstormed, and we, of course, being an arts community, we know lots of different artists doing lots of different types of art. Rounded up 12 different interested artists and started the project.
Back in the early 1990s, 91, 92, 93, somewhere in that area, I was organizing a lot of creative events in Corning, New York. Fast forward to 2017, and I was doing some work with Casey Winston, who is the program person at the Arts Council of the Southern Finger Lakes, based in Corning, New York. And so we came up with a schedule. We had 8 poets and 7 painters. And then in July of 2019, we had the exhibit of the poems and paintings. Somewhere in that process of when we were working on the project, the creative part of it, I was down in Winchester, which I've come to many times over the last number of years, and John Berry and I were talking, and I mentioned the project to John Berry, and he loved the idea. He said, wow, this is a really cool idea, and maybe he can make it happen here. And that's pretty much where it went, and then John, obviously implemented it and adapted it too. Instead of limiting it just to poems and paintings, he brought in other art forms, which I thought was a great idea. Yeah, and actually the telephone, labeling it the telephone game idea came from Casey Winston.
Okay.
Rhonda and I didn't think of that to begin with, but when this project was happening in Corning, Casey came up with the idea of the telephone.
Did you ever play the game of telephone when you were a kid?
I never did.
I
knew what it was, though, but I never played it, no.
Almost. The sky is condensed to wind, to air, to a rush roar on the ear as I climb out of the thick green of the Cherry River Valley. From the noise of the future kingdom come now I've traveled, up from Sam Black Church to Levisey to Nettie to here. By luck and by motor, by foot and by grace, I have come to hear and see. To see from kingdom come to forever now, from Black Mountain and Cranberry to Caesar Mountain, and Caesar Augustus and all his warriors never saw the like of these. Redlick and Viney, Cheat and Kennison. Cloud green and shadowed purple, the mountains drift across the summer afternoon, here and there fractured with bright, ruined castles of stone crags and cap rocks, from sand shoals lapped by the Silurian oceans become sandstone and quartzite. Chirrup and slow sliding whistles, cough and scream. The birds are busy with gossip and discovery, with governance and lust. Blue-headed vireos, black-throated green warblers, redstarts, and the hawk's Olympic skating duet on the updrafts. The others, the bobcat, bear, weasel, and porcupine, you'll likely not see unless you lose yourself in the blueberry fields, the huckleberry barrens. Still, they'll find you more often than not. The world will go on without me, but for these few moments I am sitting on top of the world, a simple summer's day, away from the busy rush of roads, the scrolling of screens, almost off the map I am, almost heaven, almost where sky meets eternity, and eternity almost whispers its secrets in this teasing kiss of a breeze. Almost, almost, almost. It's quite flattering that my work is kind of the template here for whatever is going to come after. I don't know that I approach this poem particularly in a particularly different way after John's request, other than it gave me a kind of deadline. And I work well to deadlines. I always say I hate them, but I know with hindsight that I work well to them. And on the one hand, I was recalling a hike with the poet Doug Van Gundy somewhere down in the southern mountains a couple of summers ago. And at the same time, I had out my detailed map of West Virginia, and I just love to raid all the place names that leap up off of that map. There's never been a place with so many great, rich names as West Virginia. And between the two, I began building this poem. I've always had a fascination with bird life, and that comes into the poem. And the rest was stealing memories from all over the state, quite frankly, even though I've located it in a fairly narrow part of the map of West Virginia. I'm borrowing images from hikes made a year ago to hikes made 40 years ago and everything in between. And the rest is defined by that elusive word, inspiration. One word would lead to a next. My heart, my passion would lead me somewhere else in the poem. And then I revised, and I revised, and I revised. So that I think a lot of the revision comes down to where I'm hearing it on my ear, the way I wanted it to sound, the way I wanted it to sing. What no longer surprises me here in West Virginia is how vibrant and alive so many of our small communities are, especially when it comes to promoting the arts, however you wish to define that, whether it's the literary arts, the visual arts, music, and everything in between. And so I think more to the point, I'd say when John first contacted me, I was simply pleased to have my confidence in all the good things about West Virginia reaffirmed yet again.
I think that I'm a bit of a perfectionist always, and it really doesn't matter if anybody else is going to see the work or not. It's sort of got to be something that I'm happy with. You know, I was quite comfortable with being asked to participate, and really thrilled because I have such a deep, I don't know how to put it, just a deep feeling for the River House, since I was sort of on board since before its inception, and I'm so proud of it, and so really wanted to show what a community, even of people that don't know each other, can do together. So it was a really nice opportunity. When I read Mark's poem, I I got an immediate feeling of how it made me feel, and what I wanted to do. I actually had a few different ideas of how I could go with my interpretation of how that poem made me feel. But the overriding feeling for me was this this sort of tranquility, this peace, this serenity that you get when you are alone in nature, and you don't have any other thoughts of, any outside influences, and I don't know. So it is a hard feeling to put into words, but for my own creative process, the first thing that I did was start to make some sketches and write down some thoughts about my process and what I wanted to do. And then I came out and I started cutting up some fiberboard because I thought I was going to do a casting, and etc. So, it just evolved, and I ended up then, cutting up pieces of patterns to make mountain ranges, and, I ended up doing something that doesn't look like mountains at all, but it gave, to me, my piece, when I look at it, conveys that feeling, that I wanted to convey. I think my reaction when I get to see what everybody else has done is going to probably be delight. I mean, no matter what, I can't imagine it not being a real treat, to see what other people have done.
So when Liz gave me her piece, it was with just great joy that I first looked at it, because it seemed to communicate directly with the kind of where my head is right now in terms of creating art. Hers is very much a flowy piece. I had images of infinity, natural flow from her piece. And what I've been doing recently deals very much with that. Along with my own kind of personal philosophies, which I've been trying to bring into my work, there's a phrase that people say sometime when there's 2 or 3 things in a row that are bad that happen. And the phrase is, oh my gosh, it's just one thing after another. And in fact, no truer words were ever spoken. It's always one thing after another. And that's what I am trying to photograph, those things. And my piece, which blends 2 images together, I'm working on a whole series of blended images, usually pairs. And so the subject matter is either nature, it could be something on the street, it could be anything that the images are not necessarily related. And what I'm looking for is the mocha effect. And the mocha effect is the flavor of mocha. You'd taste neither coffee nor chocolate. It is its own thing. It's a synthesis. And that's what I'm doing with the images in order to create some unity between every moment that we live, everything, one thing after another. So Liz's piece really let me flow right from that. So working on this project, which grows out of the River House, the sense of community and the sense of belonging and ownership people have of this. When the River House first started, there were so many artists who are in the area, people who self-identify as artists, as well as people who just are interested. They quilt or they paint or they play music or whatever. This was a magnet, and people came, and the number of people who, just community folks, Hampshire County folks, who come to events here, it's fostered this incredible community. where young people, there are arts programs for young folks, little kids, and they're in the same environment with more mature, experienced artists who can be role models, just like, wow, you can be older and actually do this. It's amazing. The music program, I'm a visual artist, but the music program is incredibly strong. And we were all kind of like moths to a flame. I mean, it was, when the River House first started, it was like, wow, I had no idea all these people were only 10 miles away from me. And it's because of the River House that all of this is happening. We'd all just be working on our own if it wasn't for the River House. Very soon, this show will be hung at the River House. And it'll be the first time I or anybody is going to have seen all the pieces together. And I've given some thought as to, what are people going to think? I mean, there's a wide variety of shows that get hung at the River House, and this is unique. And I think that people are going to respond very well to this, to the idea of the show, the fact that it is all West Virginia artists. And a lot of times, folks will come to a show and wonder, that's art. That's interesting. Not sure what to make of that. But this show, because it's going to be hung in the order that the pieces were created, there will be, it's almost going to be like a puzzle for folks to figure out. I wonder what the artist was thinking when they looked at this and then created this. And that'll go all the way around. And it's a built-in question that people will have. And because they're hung in order, the signage is going to be able to take you straight through what the order is. I think it'll be very well received. So maybe this in the center, that comfortably from the window,
there,
and then
we'll
space
measure,
those out,
we'll
right?
just measure in the middle. Yeah, that's a good call. Just seeing the talent that is in this room hanging that I haven't even got to put a face to yet has been fantastic. Varying in age, we have, I think one of our youngest artists is about 17. So I really look forward to the opening. She's 14 actually, so wow. And just being around so many talented artists and meeting so many people that are inspired by the area around here, it's wonderful.
So the show, Passages, I think the show is very elegant. I like the way it's hung. Love, love, love the poetry. The poetry to me just opens up a whole nother world that will live with us for a long time. And I will be rereading these poems. I really will, just to think about it, not just from my own impression, but to think about the author, the poet, what were they thinking, what were they looking at, how were they feeling? And again, to reflect with the art that they responded to.
But I hadn't seen Aaron's until I walked in here yesterday to get a coffee and didn't realize it was all up already and was like, wow, I can't believe that's really there,
You were talking about your mother's rap and went on about how you had no idea she had done that.
No, so she's a woman of many talents, obviously. She cooks, she gardens, she's an herbalist, she's an artist, she is a writer. But that she wrote a rap, that was completely out of the blue. And I didn't even know an Appalachian rap was a thing, but apparently it is, and she wrote one, and it's great.
Well, generally it comes as sound. I'm a spoken word guy, so the sound of something matters to me. And what happens to me in most cases is that I get a rhythm or a sound or a sound bite or a chunk of something that sounds right. And then I get an idea behind that or in front of that. And I start to put those things together in something that is a similar rhythm. And that generally leads me to a point or a narrative in the poem. A year of few apples. The red barn mostly barren, only some thin whispers of summer rambos, pink ladies, yellow transparents, our golden delicious. Ladders lean closely against stark walls. Past the yard, black bottoms of unused boxes and baskets stacked and lined on the dark pond's banks. Trees naked of fruit, blossoms ruined by mid-May freeze. No buzzing, no bees. A gaunt doe edging the field, sparse, soft droppings of windfalls. Songbirds fled to feeders in cities and suburbs, tanagers, finches, grosbeaks, even bunnings. Pantry shelves and freezer bins, scavenged for this season's solitary pies, settled atop cooking racks on cinnamon evenings in oven-warmed kitchens. Silent cider presses, dry spigots over unfilled vats. Outside the mill, empty crates by empty bins, by empty trucks. Nothing a day to keep the doctor away. It seemed somehow the end of all good things, the year of few apples. But then came a year of none. When I first got the photograph, like I said, it's abstract, and I saw these very powerful images. What that manifested into in my head was an idea that I'd been rolling around for a while in the pandemic year, which had this overall pall over the whole year anyway. But what happened earlier in 2020 that affected me was we had a deep freeze that killed all of the blossoms on all of the fruit trees. There was nothing bloomed. All the trees blossomed out beautifully, but all of the fruit got frozen in mid-May. We had no apples. First year I can remember with no apples. We had no peaches. We had no pears. We had very few blueberries. And that was not just true here in Monongalia County where I live, but also true in Pocahontas County, where the trees down there bear fruit every year, and they weren't there. That kind of fed into this larger idea I've had in my head for several years now that ties into global warming, that we're changing the weather patterns and the growth patterns. And every great civilization in history has been brought down by famine. And I kept in the back of my head, keep thinking, we're screwing with the growth patterns of our food. We're screwing with the life on this planet. And so all of that was kind of rolling around in my head until this stark, dark, red, black image came up, and the year of no apples, and this whole pandemic negativity with inside of the bigger picture of global climate change, I guess all kind of manifested what finally came out as the end product, or my end product.
I have played that game of telephone, and I see it today in real life when we call it gossip sometimes. When people say, this is what I did, or this is what I heard. And then the next person passes it on, and this is what she heard. Do you know what? She's been doing this, and this is what it is. And he's involved too. And of course, that just gets inflated and stretched and imagined, and it becomes something new and completely different. And that's kind of fun for an artist to imagine, to pretend, to create something new, to put another layer on top of another layer of the art. And so I think this Passages has a lot of possibilities. And we're going to see those possibilities played out with each work and each artist. I was a good student. I was one of those good girls that did the assignment. So I find the assignment part of this Passages to be a welcome. Oh, good, there's some constraints. oh, good, I don't have the whole wide universe to choose from. I have this little bit here, and that helped me to zero in, and it helped me to think about which painting I could put together. Sometimes in art making, I find these serendipitous events, and I think that was one. That, you know, the poem was sent to me because I have a connection with barns, and I've made a series of these barn paintings, and so I think I got the right poem. One of the challenges of Passages has been that, like a jigsaw puzzle, there are all these pieces with these funny shapes to them. Each one of us artists, I think, is a funny shape, a little knob here and a little cutout piece here, and I have no idea how it's going to fit together. I have even a hard time imagining this is going to be a whole, but I think that's going to be the magic of this exhibit, is that all the pieces are going to fit together somehow, and it will be whole, and we'll all go, oh my gosh, it fits. It really works. And so with that, I think I have some high expectations. I want to see the completeness, the wholeness of it. This year with COVID was a very special year as an artist. It was, and being part of Passages was really good because I felt like I wasn't quite alone. There are some other people struggling as well. And while I live with an artist, a different kind of artist, we're always bouncing ideas off each other, and sometimes the bounce is pretty hard. But this was nice to know, oh, out there somewhere, there's someone else who's doing this bit. And my friend Susan Feller is a fiber artist, and so I knew that she was a part of it. And while I don't know what she made or what her the spark was for that project of hers, I thought, oh, how nice that we're going to be in something together. So that was a good connection for me. And I also make my art down here in this dark little basement by myself. So it was also rewarding to think about that broader world and maybe some sunshine out there and hope for the better days. Yeah.
All right, so this is the document that I have in Photoshop for my Passages painting. And over here on the side, I have all of the layers that I used opened up here. And like I said before, I mostly do just painting things by hand, but then towards the end of the process, sometimes I will try out slightly different options using filters and things to see if I can adjust the lighting to work a little bit better. So an example of that would be right here with these buttons. When I initially painted them, they were a bit brighter, but I felt like they stood out a bit too much in comparison to the character's face and the lantern here. So I just dimmed them down a little bit, and it's really nice to have the ability to do that relatively quickly in digital. Another example here is the background. But for the most part, I'm just painting different elements and sometimes keeping them separated on layers if I think that that might be more convenient for making changes later. And that's sort of what it all looks like. All right, so when I received the previous artist piece, I spent around 20 minutes just looking very carefully at it and seeing what kind of aspects of it made an impression on me. And I found that the color choices on the barn were particularly intense, and that kind of intrigued me because the intense red and black had sort of an ominous quality to it. And so I wanted to carry that into my piece. And I also found that the shape on the barn was particularly interesting. There was a black mark on it that looked sort of graphic, like some kind of logo, and I sort of wanted to incorporate that into my piece as well. So I liked the sort of loose assignment quality of this because it was somewhere in between having a specific idea or brief given to you and just doing your own thing, because you're sort of allowed to take whatever you want from the previous piece, see what speaks to you, and and develop your own ideas based off of that. So it's fairly open-ended, and I thought that that was kind of an interesting idea that I wanted to see the results of. I think that if I were given the opportunity to do a project like this again, depending on what was going on at the time, I might consider that, because I think it was a good creative challenge, and I would be interested to see, what would happen if I were given that opportunity again.
Hello, good evening. This has been so exciting for me, this project. Thank you so much, John, for inviting me. I've just been thrilled to be invited and to be part of this project. It's so special, the level of work in this multimedia, the different types of media, the light, the movement. It's just been delightful. When I received Aaron's photograph of your picture, I sat with it for a really, really long time. I loved the starkness of the picture and the vibrancy of the woman in the picture. And yet there is such an undercurrent of tension. There was so much detail to the jacket, and then that old lantern. This wasn't a woman walking through the dark with a flashlight. She had an old lantern. It took me a while to really sit with this, which is kind of the way it is with poets. I think if we see something, a lot of times if I have something to say, a poem can come to me really easily. But with Aaron's work, I had to really just sit and see what I wanted to say. So I'll read my poem. It's called The West Coast of Ireland. The hills behind her are dark against a night-lit sky. Her determined stride moves her forward. The lamp she holds barely pushes away the darkness. Yet it reflects one side of her face, how she looks forward with that penetrating gaze. The wind blows steadily. Her fitted red wool jacket with its 6 large brass buttons, her brown skirt moving with the wind. Where is she going, this young woman? What summons her at this time of night in the cold? What must she be carrying in this deserted territory? Has she been called somewhere to help? Or is she going somewhere for help? Is she going to birth a baby? Or is she a spy bringing a most important message? Why does she travel at night alone? She moves steadily forward, and she is not afraid. Where are the boots she usually wears? Was she in too much of a hurry? Whatever the reason, there is no stopping her. What powers her is not that small lantern. It is her own fierce light. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. As I needed to interpret this painting and what was going on in the painting, it's a little bit like working with a poetry prompt where someone gives you, a hint or some idea about, write a poem about your trip to Annapolis or whatever. So I looked at that poem, like I say, for a long time. And my process was to just really be with it and get the sense of the color, the time of day, what was going on, what the weather might have been like, what the movement in the piece was, the main movement was, and then to look really closely at the figure that was in the poem, in the painting. And then I worked with that for a long time and tried a couple different things and then came up with my final piece. I think it's a wonderful thing for us artists to be together in this multimedia way. It's just a real opportunity for artists to work together.
When the email came into my inbox and I opened it up, I certainly read my intro to this project's finished and it's attached. Please click. As the poem downloaded and I read it, I immediately came to an idea of location and purpose because I received it in December. It talks about a light and a journey and a path and at night, and the three major planets were all coming together to be the Christmas star or the holiday, the Epiphany star. So I took the light in that poem into the actual time period that I was being inspired by. And in the poem, it talks about a journey and a person being on it. Here in West Virginia in Hampshire County, I travel our country roads all the time. There's a beautiful winding road, which is Ford Hill Road on the way down to my property off of Route 50. And about 4 miles south of it is what I depicted in my artwork. If you're heading north to Route 50, you'll be able to see the zigs and zags as the Pew property is on both sides. Beautiful rolling hills, open hills, a little bit of fencing, and in my imagination, the beautiful star would be reflecting onto the road. In reality, you would have to see it going south. But I'm an artist, so I changed it. I think one of the reasons that the grant was successful and being awarded from the Department of History, Culture, and Arts from West Virginia is that this could be a template for others to experiment and involve their members, tweak it a little bit based on their group, but take that concept of a length of time involving talent, bringing it together, and then presenting it to your community and to the public. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how the project came together and so many different personalities involved. Appreciate this video opportunity for it kind of to archive it or preserve everything and more of the backstories. I think it's really important to have the backstories besides the artwork. Everyone's pieces of art will be individual, but tying them together is important, and that's the people who made it. I'd like to say that this project is perfect to be incubated in West Virginia. Our mountains and the way that the state is set up and the way our communities are built, it's difficult to network 6 to 7 hours from north to south. But it's really easy to be able to pass it along using a little bit of internet and bring a project together and have it physically here at the River House. But I think this concept can happen in West Virginia because the state believes in the arts and the crafts. It's our livelihoods, it's our heritage, and it's a contemporary way to communicate.
So yes, normally I do have many factors that contribute to my inspiration and therefore the creation that comes from it. In this case, it was a little different because I just had one image to look at, and that was the artwork that preceded mine. It took me a minute. I had to really think about what was the artist trying to say, how did I feel about what I perceived her to be saying, and I wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure. I actually did show the artwork to some people that were not connected with the show at all, just to get their impressions, to see if they were similar to mine. And so once I just kind of mulled it around, slept on it for a couple of nights, I knew where I wanted to go. The only thing I was worried about is I used some sticks in the work, and I was worried about them breaking off before it got to its home. No, I felt like what I was trying to say was pretty clear. I think the work stood on its own as an art piece, without seeing the previous work, though I do think it will be very good to see the chain of work that inspired the next piece. I'm looking forward to that. As a mixed media artist, I work in so many different materials that I can be taking a walk and see the sun setting and say, I've got to speak to that. Or lately, the cicadas. I found one in my dad's car, photographed him like crazy, and thought, a little cicada piece would be cool. I really think it depends on what I'm thinking and feeling. There have been times in my life where I have been transitioning, certainly recently, and I think my piece speaks to a transition of sorts. And I think for many artists, emotion can definitely influence and even govern how we express ourselves artistically. So no, I don't have a set process. Sometimes I do need to dream on it, think on it, look around me, feel it. Sometimes I just go right to it. It just really depends. I think art is a healer. I think that art is a communicator and it brings people together. And I think that any community benefits when there's community-oriented art or access, I think is so important. For West Virginia, with the smaller towns and the more rural area, yes, I can see how it is a touchstone. It's a gathering place. It's a place to learn and grow and to share with each other. And I think the River House has done an incredible job as far as bringing people together, offering opportunities to learn. They've got their marketplaces. They just really have done a lot for the community. And I think it's a wonderful model. I'd like to see that in more areas. So yeah, I support it completely, and I believe that it is very important. Life is tough. Life is tough in the best of times. And, barring the pandemic, life is tough. So if you have a safe place to go and be creative and just set aside your worries and just be in a creative mode, I think that is good for everyone. No matter your talent, no matter your ability, I think it's a good thing. I know it is.
I guess I should start off saying thank you to Joe and John Barry for giving me this opportunity. That, Joe saw me sketching a few times, and she was like, she told John Barry about me, and he reached out to my parents, of course, and they were like, hey, why don't you do this? And I was like, oh, sure. What is it? I was like, okay. So I didn't know at first that there was going to be so many amazing artists and poets and all the above in there. So I was freaking out a bit whenever I realized that there were. So I was like, okay, you don't procrastinate on this one. You gotta pay attention. Yeah, I guess. So I've done a few other things at the River House before, and they have given me a huge opportunity for the arts here and the music, and I've just enjoyed all that they've offered. The piece from Terre Hall that got my attention, she did such a beautiful, amazing display, but I only got in 2D, so I didn't see the branches and things going out of it till now, and I was like, oh, that's cool, because I didn't see it. But I saw that there was a dark and there was a light, and it looked like out of the darkness there was light, a bright side, and that was my main inspiration for it, that even light can shine through in the darkest times. And so that made me sort of create this character. It's a soldier or a woman who's been through a lot, and she's traveling and she needs to go somewhere, but there's this huge mountain range she can't quite get past without a mountain guide. And she comes across this spirit or ghost, and she doesn't know what to do at first. And, either she trusts this ghost because the ghost tells her all these paths and places she can go, or she follows her own thinkings out of her dark mind and ways that she's been through. So I think the main thing I wanted to express was how who we look up to can really change the course of our paths and make us who we are today. And I may not have as many accomplishments as some of the other incredible people here, but I hope that I can include this one eventually later on in my life, that I did this. And I'm humbled to be, I'm incredibly honored to just be here, and I'm a little nervous, of course. But overall, I will say I've enjoyed all of this amazing project, and I was really excited to be a part of it. Yeah, I think that's it.
I thought I would be writing either an essay or a short story of some kind. But when I got the artwork, the digital art that came from the amazing Taylor Mowry, and I was stunned. I was stopped in my tracks, which is great. I got this piece, I printed it out, and then I sat looking at it for about 3 weeks. I kept moving it around this room. I'd have it over here. I have it over on this wall. I kept moving, and I would just sit here and look at it. In the beginning, I remember having the feeling of, I got nothing. You know, I didn't have a story. No story came. And I can remember sitting here, and I have a pen, and I started kind of tapping the pen on my desk. And while I was looking at this print, and after a while, the tapping, as I was looking at this picture, I started to just say some lines to the rhythm of my pen tapping. And before I knew it, I was scribbling and tapping and looking and scribbling and tapping and looking. And then suddenly I had a 4-minute, very strange, very odd for me, new kind of poem. I actually call it kind of an Appalachian rap, because unlike rap artists, I can't speak quickly. I speak slowly. So it's slow, as if in the vernacular of Appalachia. It's got that kind of rhythm, like a train moving slowly through the mountains. And I really and truly do not know where it came from, but I had such a fun time writing it. And I knew it was the right expression for what I got from Taylor's art. A haint is a spirit, a restless spirit in Appalachian lore. So haints, and sometimes boo was added to it, like a boo haint. So it could be something scary, could be something friendly, but it's a restless spirit. Okay, this is The Poet and the Boo Haint, which is a sort of Appalachian rap. And it's about losing and finding your voice. And it will be much slower than any other rap you have ever heard in your life. I board the late night train in the vicious pouring rain, with the knowledge that the main destination is these words. Handing ticket to conductor, he espies my shield instructor, mistakes it for destructor, intentions stay unnamed. Woman travels here alone, this unfamiliar zone, protecting of my own right to be. And the clack, clack, clacking with the miles subtracting, and my mind enacting all my dreams. I left the town and it's winning for a holler and my spinning of the yarns of new beginning I will write. Wrapped my shins and my ankle in straps that do rankle, a shield to keep me tranquil. Did it work? The rhythmic rocking of this vessel passing over valley trestle soothes the mental wrestle in my mind. I am not alone. I have my pens, I have my phone. I like a dog who gnaws his bone. I am anxious.
Conductors laugh, now comes hoppin'. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Town's one more stoppin'. Get ye ready for the droppin'. Hear me now? Heavy mists will be layin' in the place ye be stayin'. Keen ye haints be surveyin' for fresh blood. The language of this district muddles thinking and restricts it. Do I nod or just insist it be rephrased? I hesitate too long, he takes away his song. I wonder, am I wrong for coming here? As we pull into the station, I rush past him with vexation. Is this not my home nation where I'm free? Upon abandoned platform, I seek a place to transform. What began as an art form now restricts. I see this place of isolation with hopes for inspiration, and instead I find ablation. Where am I? Moving down a graveled path, fighting fear, fearing wrath, seeking solace of a bath. Shelter me. I continue on my way. The train will not convey to safety's nest shall lay. What's to fear? As if in answer to my query, misty figure appears near me. In azure wisp so sheery, what to do? When a ghost is one's attacker, what defense has a yacker? Can my words form a lacquer to contain him? I want to hurl my training at him, bludgeon him with wordy erratum to dissolve this ghostly stratum, yet I make not a peep. From the heart of the whirling is tossed a glow of swirling, my fingers dumb unfurling, catch it quick. Now a light that is mine signals he is not unkind, as he bids me to unbind my writing hand. Without an ounce of assurance, nor yet is it deference, I step boldly toward endurance, or so I hope. This creature of the night carries with him his own light, knowing ways, knowing flight. Secrets I must know. As later I will learn from the spirit, sometimes stern and motivated by concern. He's my boo-haint. In these Appalachian ruins, there's restless spirits for us humans, and as teachers they are shoo-ins. Settle in. When I moved here from the city, my first thought was more's the pity, for these mountains are not witty. Foolish me. With boo-haint I have settled, shed my weapons and felt nettled, yet my words I have peddled through these hills.
When I received the Appalachian Wrap from Lainey Hobby, I didn't know what I was going to do with that, really. I had expected to receive from her, knowing her, a essay or a short story that I could take that and add rhythm to, let's say. But there was already a lot of rhythm in this piece that she gave me. When it was passed to me, it was at a particularly busy season. Things were starting to open back up, so I was doing more classes and concerts. And so I listened to it once and then kind of mentally checked out for a week or two. And then John Barry, he asked me, so how's the project coming along? And honestly, I had completely forgotten that I needed to be working on this. So I said, it's coming, without much definition. And at that point, I think I only had like 3 or 4 days left of the deadline. So that made me say, all right, I have however much time, 2 hours here. I'm sitting down with my instrument, with a notebook, and I'm not getting back up until this is written. And thankfully that worked because
The song, when I sat and I focused, it just came to me almost instantly. First as a poem, I had all the words, and then creating this melody behind it.
There's a mist rising on the mountains through which we cannot see. But as leaves fall, grass grows tall. West Virginia, you'll always be. From the top of the peaks where sight is far and clear to the quiet of the woods with the woodpeckers near in this ancient mountain. Caught in moments past, there's growth, breath, movement towards future that will last. There's a mist rising on the mountain through which we cannot see. But as leaves fall, grass grows tall. West Virginia, you'll always be. There's a ripple in the river, a changing of beliefs as we build this bridge that spans two mountains out of reach. But water when it's falling, rushing it turns white. There is gold dust in the cracks of my honeysuckle life. There's a mist rising on the mountains through which we cannot see. But as leaves fall, grass grows tall. West Virginia, you'll always be. There's a mist rising on the mountains through which we cannot see. But as leaves fall, grass grows tall. West Virginia, you'll always be.